So today we are going to be looking at my stats of 2019 for the books that I've read and all that jazz that Goodreads offers. I am still sick, but I'm going to do my best to cut out all the sick noises. I will preface this by saying in 2019, I did a terrible job at keeping up with Goodreads, the worst I've ever done. I've never been great at it, but I've been really bad at it this year. So I know that these stats aren't 100% correct. I know that there are a few books that I forgot to mark as read that I did read, but this is close enough, and I just consider all these stats fun more than like something that I really need to be perfectly correct, but I will make a really solid effort in 2020 to do better so that the stats video can be more accurate next year. Oh, I should also preface this by saying that I'm filming this before the end of the year. It's December 27th right now. So there are 2 books that aren't on the list yet because I haven't reviewed them. I haven't done a video review of them yet, and I always link my video reviews after I've created them. So technically there are 2 books that even more books that aren't right. Anyway, according to Goodreads, and if you're wondering, the way I found this is I just Googled my Goodreads stats and followed the first link, so you can do this too. But anyway, according to Goodreads, which is as close as we can get, I read 103 books, counting the 2 books that I have read but haven't reviewed yet. That's 105. Again, not completely accurate, but it's close. And according to Goodreads, of those 103 that I marked as read, that is 42,925 pages. Holy cow. Goodreads says that my shortest book that I read this year was Cenote, and my longest was The Count of Monte Cristo, which I got my copy of The Count of Monte Cristo from the library, and then Drennan took The Count of Monte Cristo out of my room, so I don't even have it on my shelf anymore. It's in his room now because he thought it was a monster book, and he thought it was cool, and he was reading it to me and telling me about the monsters and what they were doing in that book, and so I let him keep it in his room because it was too cute. But the copy that I have now is unabridged, but the copy that I read this year was from the library and it was abridged, so that's not completely correct. It's probably still the longest book that I read this year because I don't think it was a really thoroughly abridged book. It still felt pretty thick to me, but I don't really know how long the copy that I read was. But anyway, Cenote is a book that I narrated, and it's 27 pages long, and The Count of Monte Cristo, the unabridged version, is 1,276 pages, so she's a chunker. Most popular book that I read this year was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. We're not surprised. I started my reread of the Harry Potter series this year. Least popular is Cracking the Relationship Code, which is another book that I narrated. Only one person other than me read it, which is not surprising. It was a self-pub that was freshly published near the end of the year. Totally fine. My average rating for 2019 was 3.9 stars, which feels about right. I was so disappointed when I was building my favorite and least favorite books of the year list. I had 15 books on my list for my favorite books of the year, and about half of them I wish I could have replaced with something else. And it's not because they weren't good. I loved every book that I talked about on that list, but I didn't feel passionately about every book on that list. There were several that I was like, this is great, but I wouldn't have wanted it to make it to my favorites list. I would have preferred that I loved more books than this. Does that make sense? I reflecting on my year, there were a lot of great books, but not very many new favorites or new books that I was gonna talk about for years to come. Just a lot of good books, a lot of 4 stars, a lot of 5 stars because it's great, but not 5 stars because it was incredible. Do you know what I mean? So I do know that there were a lot of 3 and 4 star books this year, so it's not surprising that 3.9 is the average. I really hope that 2020 brings me some new favorites, brings me some new hidden gems. And since you guys have been sending me so many of your favorite books this year or last year in 2019, I have a feeling that that's going to happen because I think 2019 I was really focusing on a lot of fantasy series. I was focusing on picking up a lot of like the most popular books, which is stellar, but I am excited for 2020 to be a combination of that and a combination of maybe some hidden gems that aren't talked about as much on BookTube, but deserve as much love. Do you know what I mean? Oh man, I know I sound bad. I'm sorry. Highest rated book on Goodreads is The Upworld, and I'm really happy about that. This is one of the books that was sent to me by a small pressed indie published author. And I don't know her personally, but someone that I know knows her. So I do want her book. I ended up giving her book 3 stars. It really wasn't for me, but I still thought it was incredibly well written and there was a lot of really great stuff for it. But I do want her book to succeed because it was really well done. It was just an urban fantasy and it dealt with some things that I just personally don't care to read. So I'm really happy that the majority of people that are reading it are loving it. First review of the year was Gone Girl, and I kind of have this thing that I do every year where the first book of the year is like the thing that sets the tone, like how you rated it is how your year is going to be, which feels right because I rated this 4 stars and it does feel like it was a 4-star year for my reading for the most part overall. And then also the tone of the book, like what went down in the book is like a foretelling of how your year will be. It's silly, but it's something that I do. And Gone Girl, I remember finishing that and be like, ugh, that's how I started my year, which it was a great book, but also that's not really the tone you want your year to be. Thankfully, that didn't work out. I had a great year. But now let's go into the bookish survey because I just looked back at my old video and that's what I did last year in this video to make it a little bit longer. So let's do that again. Perpetual Page Turner has a blog that does the end of the year survey. So let's do it. Let's go. I'm not going to answer all of these because there's too many questions, but I'll scroll through and do the interesting ones. Best book I read in 2018. I don't know. Last year, I was so sure of my answer. Last year, I was positive how I felt about my favorite and least favorite books. And this year, what is my favorite? It's tough. I didn't have like books that were incredible this year like I've had in years past. I've had books that I've loved, Red Seas Under Red Skies, which I always get comments about because people either love this book or hate it. And I loved it so much. But was it my favorite book of the year? I don't have an answer for you. I don't know what my favorite book of the year was. I'm hoping next year will be different. I am going to try to step outside of my comfort zone even more and try to find books that just I can't wait to talk about nonstop in 2020. Book you were excited about and thought you were going to love but didn't. I think A Wise Man's Fear definitely fits for that because I loved book 1 so much and book 2, I didn't think it was terrible, but it certainly let me down. Most surprising in a good way or a bad way book that you read. That has to be The Name of the Wind because I didn't know if I was gonna love it. Some of my very good friends didn't like this book very much. Daniel Green, Elliot Brooks, and several of my friends love it. Jay, of course, is the obvious one that loves it so much. So I didn't know how I would feel about it. And I kind of just expected when a book has a lot of hype and a lot of mixed reviews, I tend to sit right in the middle. I'm like, it was okay. I see why people like it. I see why people don't like it. I was fine with it. So I guess I kind of expected for it to be a 3-star book and I was afraid I was going to hate it and I ended up loving it. Book you pushed the most people to read. Does it have to be a new book? Because I know I've pushed a lot of people this year to read the Gentleman Bastard series because this is the year that I finished the 3 books that are currently published, and I hyped it like nobody's business, and a lot of people picked it up this year because of me. I know a lot of people have picked up Mistborn because of me this year. I read The Lord of the Rings at the end of last year, so I know a lot of people picked that up because of me this year. And I also know that a lot of people picked up The Wheel of Time because of me this year because I started this year, which is so surprising because there are people, again, Daniel, that hype this series so much, so it surprises me that I even have any influence whatsoever among people that are going to read Wheel of Time, but that's cool that other people are starting it with me. Best series you started in 2018. Best sequel. Oh wait, I've been saying 2018 because that's what the it doesn't matter. Best series you started in 2019. Best series I started this year. Ooh, things are starting to blend together and it's hard for me to remember what I started this year and what I started last year. I want to say the First Law trilogy, but I only read the first book in 2019. So, gosh, I don't even own a lot of the books that I've been reading this year. I'm scrolling through my books read list and I'm gonna go with the First Law trilogy because it certainly has the most potential. There were other books like The Fifth Season that had an amazing start, and I thought it would make my favorite series list, and then the second two books let me down, so it didn't make that list. So I'm gonna go with First Law, and I'm just gonna cross my fingers that it'll follow through. Best sequel of 2018, of course, is gonna be Red Seas Under Red Skies. Best series ender. Did I finish any series this year? I don't know that I did. I started or continued a lot of really long series, or I caught up with series that are still ongoing, but I don't know that I actually read the last book in a series at all this year. New favorite author you discovered in 2019. Can Scott Lynch count? Because he became a favorite author in 2019. Edgar Allan Poe is a new author to me this year, and I loved the few bits of his works that I've read. Oh, Isaac Asimov, of course. Isaac Asimov is the answer to this. He's an author that I just started in 2019. I've read 3 of his books so far, and I'm so excited to keep reading. I love his world. I love his use of AIs. I love his concepts and the problems that he creates, the laws that he creates, and then the issues he creates within his laws and how he solves them. It's just I would read just about anything that he wrote. Best book from a genre you don't typically read or was out of your comfort zone. So one of my goals of 2019 was to read genres that I don't typically read, and I had a list of 4 genres that I was reading, and I did great with this goal, except for historical fiction. I didn't do great with that one. So there's a lot of books that I could talk about here because I did a really good job of stepping outside of my comfort zone in 2019. And I would say Isaac Asimov is definitely the best author that I found through that. I also loved Pet Sematary. This year was the first year that I read any Stephen King, and I loved Pet Sematary so much. Most action-packed or thrilling / unputdownable book of the year. Wow. I actually want to answer The Black Prism. And maybe there's something that would be better. Let me scroll through these again. I don't know. I'm scrolling through these, and I think The Black Prism is the right answer for that. And I didn't like the sequel, and I haven't continued on with the series yet, but I loved The Black Prism. I had issues with it, but not a lot. I thought it was so good. And oh man, I'm so nervous to continue on with the series because I didn't like book 2 at all. Book you read in 2019 that you would be the most likely to reread next year. There's a lot that I want to reread, but I think the answer is going to be Wuthering Heights, because I started this book expecting to dislike it because I went into it because my friend hated it, so I was excited to hate read it and discuss it with her, and I fell in love with it. And I went in with the wrong perspective, and I went in with the wrong understanding of what this book's purpose is. So now that I feel like I have a better concept of the purpose of this book and what it's delivering to me, I really want to reread it and give it a proper dedicated review and really get out of it what was meant to be gotten out of it, I think. Favorite cover of a book you read in 2018. I think I'm actually going to go with Peace and Turmoil, which is written by booktuber Elliot Brooks, and the cover design was done by booktuber Jay from Captured in Words. It's gorgeous, and I think it even came in a little bit dirty, and I was so mad, which I buy almost all my books secondhand, so all my books are dirty, but I was so mad about this one because the cover was so beautiful. Most memorable character of 2019. I'm gonna go with Spensa. This is my gut reaction. Maybe there's someone that would be better for this, but my gut reaction is Spensa because she's the character that has stuck with me the most from Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. She is what 16-year-old Murphy looked like, or maybe closer to 15-year-old Murphy. But anyway, she is, oh man, I love her so much. She's been through a lot, and she's working through her issues, and the way she works through it is by putting up her guard and by being really aggressive and insulting and keeping people at arm's length except for her very closest people. She puts on a front. She wants people to see her as tough and untouchable, and she doesn't want anyone to know how badly she's hurting. And the way she carries herself and the way she portrays herself and the way she wants people to see her and the way she truly is 15, 16-year-old Murphy when I was working through my own stuff and didn't know how to do it well and responded by putting up a guard and being aggressive. And it took me a while to break down those barriers and to become a little bit more well-balanced. And Spensa is a character It's really funny because I was watching Brandon Sanderson's interview Daniel's interview with Brandon Sanderson, and I remember him saying that like he really struggled being a 40-year-old man writing a 16, 17-year-old girl, and he's like, I want to write her well, I want to write her accurately, so I need teenage girls to be reading my book before it's published to let me know if I'm doing it right. And that really stuck with me because I remember like pausing the interview and turning to Corey and being like, this is the one time that I've read a YA book and actually felt seen and like a character looks exactly like me. Obviously, everybody's different. Everybody's had their own experiences, so people are going to see themselves in different characters. But if you want to know 15, 16-year-old Murphy, because she looks really different than 27-year-old Murphy, read Skyward, because that was me. So I don't know if she's my favorite character, but she's certainly my most memorable. I'm scrolling through these now because I'm starting to get tired of this. Favorite non-romantic relationship of the year is obviously going to be Locke and Jean. Best book you've read that you read based solely on recommendation from someone else. That has to be Pet Sematary, right? For my birthday, Daniel sent me Pet Sematary as a gift, and it was my first Stephen King book, and it was incredible. It was one of my favorite books of the year. So I never would have picked that. I wasn't even really interested in trying Stephen King before that book, and I definitely had no interest in Pet Sematary. So if I was going to pick up a Stephen King book, that would be really low on the list. And I picked it up just because he sent it to me, and it was one of the best books I read this year. It was incredible. I think about it all the time. Okay, last question that I'm going to end this on. Even though there's a lot more questions to the bookish survey, and of course it'll be linked in the description if you want to check it out. But the question that I'm gonna end it on is best hidden gem. And the reason I want to end it here is because one thing that I'm disappointed in myself about 2019 is I didn't pick up as many hidden gems as I have in years previous. Like I said earlier in this video, I really focused on books that are more popular this year. I was picking up a bunch of classics that are really well known. I was picking up a lot of high fantasy series that are really well known because this has been a great year for high fantasy for me. I got into horror and sci-fi, so I was picking up a lot of really well-known books in those genres. So it was a great year for me for exploring new things. I was exploring new genres that I hadn't before, and that was really, really good for me. And I found a lot of great books that way. But I was also, because I was exploring new genres and because I was diving deeper into genres that are really popular, I didn't really pick up hidden gems. I was picking up the most popular ones. And so I feel like I was talking about a lot of popular books this year on my channel, which is great, and I want to keep doing that. But one thing that I have loved doing in the past is scavenging the library for just a cover that catches my eye or a description that catches my eye and going into it having never heard anyone ever talk about it before. And now that you guys are sending me a bunch of your favorite books, I have a ton of books that I've never heard of on my shelves that you guys have loved and want to hear my thoughts on. And so 2020, I want to be a better balance of books that you guys have already read and are excited about and books that the majority hasn't ever heard of. And I want more hidden gems in my 2020 wrap up. That said, I'm going to talk about On Luna Time, which is a time travel romance, which is totally not the sort of thing that I normally read, but it is so good. It is perfectly complex while being super easy to understand. It's romantic, it's cute, and it has a huge emphasis on family and finding your family again that you lost. And it's just a really fun, cute read. It is self-published, which is why I say it's a hidden gem, because a lot of times people don't find those self-published books as easily. I've talked about it a lot on my channel, but there you go, I talked about it again. So there are my stats of 2019, as well as a little bit of the bookish survey of 2019. I'd love to chat with you guys more about this in the comments. I post videos every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, so I'll see you guys next time. Bye.